My name is Sabine Roser, Professor of Ethics and Chair of the Human Research Ethics Committee of TU Delft. In this web lecture, I will very briefly summarize the history and importance of human research ethics. The theoretical foundations and practices of human research ethics have initially been developed based on experiences in medical research. The worst excesses are the horrendous medical experiments by the Nazis in concentration camps during World War II. But there are many more examples about very controversial and sometimes shocking medical experiments. Let me give a few other well-documented examples. The Tuskegee syphilis study was an experiment which began in 1932 by the United States Public Health Services. The experiment involved tracking the long-term health of 400 African American people from poor economic backgrounds who had syphilis. In the 1940s, penicillin was identified as standard treatment for syphilis, but the researchers did not inform the participants that they could be cured in that way. The researchers wanted to monitor the long-term effects of the disease, but they did not inform the participants about the duration of the study nor about possible available cures. In 1972, this became public and led to outrage concerning disregard of the health of the participants. In the 1950s and 60s, Chester Southam, an important virologist and cancer researcher, injected cancer cells into healthy individuals and prisoners. He wanted to observe if cancer could be transmitted and if people could become immune to cancer. All these shocking experiments led to the awareness that there was a need to establish codes of conduct for medical research and mandatory reviews by institutional review boards, or IRBs. A first milestone for these developments in terms of regulation and procedures is the Nuremberg Tribunal in Germany from 1946 to 1949 after the Second World War. Among the charges were that German physicians conducted cruel medical experiments on thousands of concentration camp prisoners. During the trial, the Nuremberg Code was established in 1948, stating that the voluntary consent of the human subject is absolutely essential. This made clear that subjects should give consent. Furthermore, it was stated that the benefits of the research must outweigh the risks. The Declaration of Helsinki, signed in June 1964, is widely regarded as the cornerstone document in human research ethics. It is a set of ethical principles regarding human experimentation developed for the medical community by the World Medical Association, WMA. It is updated every 4 or 5 years. It is not a legally binding instrument under international law. However, it has been codified in or influenced national or regional legislation and regulations. That declaration states, among other things, that it is the duty of the physician in medical research to protect the life, health, privacy, and dignity of the human subject. Also, the right of research subjects to safeguard their integrity must always be respected. Every precaution should be taken to respect the privacy of the subject, the confidentiality of the patient's information, and to minimize the impact of the study on the subject's physical and mental integrity. Risks should not exceed benefits. Informed consent is always required. Vulnerable persons need special protection. Special attention is also required for those who cannot give or refuse consent for themselves. Furthermore, the declaration states that the design and performance of each experimental procedure involving human subjects should be clearly formulated in an experimental protocol. This protocol should be submitted for evaluation and approval to an independent ethical review committee. It took some time to establish such independent ethics procedures and committees. Nowadays, ethics committees oversee most governmentally funded medical research around the world. Furthermore, other incidents have compelled universities to develop procedures to review ethical issues of participation of human subject research also in a non-medical context. A non-medical example which caused a lot of controversy concerns the Milgram experiments in the 1960s. These psychological experiments were aimed to assess how long someone would continue to provide electric shocks to another person if they are told to do so. It turned out that many research subjects followed such instructions obediently, even if they thought that the other person could be seriously hurt. What the participants administering the shocks did not know is that they were not actually giving any shocks to anyone. Some of the participants suffered from post-traumatic stress syndrome afterwards. In other words, the participants in the trial were deceived as well as harmed. An important milestone in how to deal with questions of human research ethics beyond the medical practices was the Belmont Report from 1978. The occasion for this report was the public outrage concerning the Tuskegee syphilis experiment I mentioned earlier. In this report, the National Commission for the Protection of Human Subjects of Biomedical and Behavioral Research in the USA formulated general ethical principles and guidelines for all research involving human subjects, so not only concerning medical research. The three fundamental and still very relevant ethical principles for using any human subjects for research as mentioned in the report are: respect for persons, protecting the autonomy of all people, treating them with courtesy and respect, and informed consent. Beneficence, this means that one should do no harm. And justice. The Belmont principles are also relevant for technology, engineering, and design. Some examples of ethical issues that may arise are, for example, building own devices with potentially significant harms, experience with tools for vulnerable groups, and issues relating to privacy. Early ICT research evolved without significant concern for human subjects. Ethical considerations were either absent or misapplied. Cases include sharing of sensitive information. This is well documented in the so-called Menlo Report from 2012. The Menlo Report applies the Belmont principles to research in ICT and cybersecurity with an additional section on respect for law and public interest. The fast-growing concern about privacy is also reflected by the General Data Protection Regulation by the EU launched in 2018, which forces us to reconsider the processes by which we handle and store data. Funding bodies like the EU and an increasing number of journals also require that research involving human subjects be subjected to ethical review. These developments have resulted in the need to establish ethical committees to review human research ethics in all disciplines, including social sciences, but also engineering. Since 2012, TU Delft has an Institutional Human Research Ethics Committee, or HREC. In our other web lectures, we provide you with more information about our procedures. You'll find further references on the history of human research ethics on our website. Thank you for watching.